And like Mish said, please chime in with any questions. I do want to make this pretty informal. There's, slide decks here and content to run through. And hopefully we can cover off any questions as well. Because we have a 50-50 audience that are newish to Slack or have used it before, what I really want to cover off is to make sure everyone has the foundational knowledge of how Slack can be used. And then really talk about it in the world of an EA. What are the use cases? What are the benefits? And how do we actually onboard execs as well as other cross-functional partners into the platform? So Mish has done a fantastic job to give us an intro. So I work with enterprise customers to help organizations adopt Slack. Jess is on the line as well. She's one of our senior EAs, and she supports our chief marketing officer. And then Julie's also on the line, and apologies, Julie, we didn't put your photo on here. I wasn't sure whether or not you did it. She looks after, she's the head of APAC marketing as well. And she's been really pivotal in getting this particular session up and running. So thank you so much for joining. Like I said, let's dive straight into it. I want to just make sure everyone starts with an understanding of what Slack is and how you can get started before we talk about use cases for EAs. I've been at Slack for 2 years now, and before I actually joined, I've never used Slack before. So it is quite an intuitive tool, but it takes a little bit of time to think about how do I use this in my day-to-day. And really, I just want to start by saying that this is our mission statement. This is what brought me to actually come and join Slack. I think Mina and Adele, you're both on the line. I've actually met you both at an event here in Melbourne, and so you would have heard a little bit about Slack. We're a fantastic organisation where our mission is really to make people's working lives simpler, more pleasant, more productive. And the funny thing is, when we built this product, we didn't actually have the goal of actually coming out and building a productivity platform. It was actually built by our co-founders as they were building out a gaming application, and they didn't want to communicate via email with team members all across the globe. So they actually built this product out of necessity, and it just works. So let's actually talk about what the tool is. So when people ask me, what is Slack? And you say it's a productivity platform, and they look at you and they blink and they're like, oh yeah, I understand. You kind of think about, well, the simplest way to think about how we use Slack at Slack, but also organizations and individuals that use it really well, is that we replace emails inside a company or emails in between a group of individuals. But also, like Mish said, she uses it in her personal life. I use it as well to manage shopping lists and budgets, and I bring in sort of my files and post photos in there as well. I've got a home improvement channel and we're renovating, so we put all the invoices and photos into a Slack channel rather than email, and that really means that I have a historical archive where all my messages are organised. So it's a different way of working. And we talk about a productivity and collaboration platform because really with Slack, you bring in all different individuals that you might be working with. And for a lot of our customers, they choose to use Slack across the whole organization. So they have the ability to connect with people across the business in multiple geographies and time zones. And particularly as we move to remote work, where we can't actually tap someone on the shoulder or walk up to their desk, you have the ability to connect with these individuals in Slack. But we also have customers that don't use it across the whole organization. They've got their own use cases and different tools, but they choose to adopt Slack for various reasons, in particular the application integrations. And what we do with connecting people in Slack is that you can set up what we call channels, which I'll talk about in more detail, where you have focused conversations on a particular topic or to a particular group of individuals. So rather than having to sift through your emails and then typing new subject lines with typing up all the 20 individuals or a mailing list that you need to set up an email, you set up a channel, and that is your dedicated space there to communicate. So emails, we use emails at Slack only for external collaboration if the other external member doesn't also have Slack as well. Everything else, we actually don't communicate via email. So on average, in a week, I probably get about 20 emails max. which is not that much considering my prior roles. And a lot of the emails that I do get now out of the 20 are sort of like alerts from different systems that don't integrate into Slack. So I don't actually get a lot of conversations coming through, and that really helps me stay focused in how I work and not have to triage what comes through. So in emails, we have a lot of emails that come through as individual messages or threaded replies. What we do in Slack, though, is we bring them into channels. So those conversations and messages and alerts from different e-newsletters that you have actually get grouped into what we call channels, and they're based on particular topics, and you create those topics. So you could have company-wide announcements if you worked in a customer support team, or even you can create an EA channel for your EA group to collaborate, sort of help and support channels with cross-functional partners as well. We also have private channels, so you can actually make sure that not everyone can join them and only those that get invited into those channels. So it is a little bit more hidden, and those that aren't part of that conversation aren't privy to what's being discussed. So the rationale behind that is that rather than flicking out emails, you go to a dedicated channel to communicate on a topic or a set of individuals. So let's actually get into the tool. So we talk about channels. Channels are focused conversations, and they bring order and clarity. And it's really up to you how you want to design a channel. So here is a screenshot of Slack. What you see here is we've got different channels, and they follow a naming convention. And so we separate keywords by a hyphen in them, just to keep it really easy to identify the purpose and the potential audience in a channel. So here is one that Sarah has clicked on, and she's got social media channel open. In here, you'll see all the conversations that come through, and you'll notice that there's files being shared, and so it's kept in the context of the conversation topic. You'll see that there's 21 members in here, and you also see that we have some applications integrated as well. So I'll talk about that in a bit more detail. What you also notice is when you click on the information icon in here, you can actually make a call in Slack as well. So particularly as we're most likely working from home, and if you want to make a quick call, you press the call button and it will launch a meeting in the channel where people will get a notification and they can simply press join. What I want to say about this channel as well is that you can invite certain people in. So you can just click on the add icon and invite individuals in. But also that we have this channel here is what we call a public channel, and it means others in your organization can search for that channel and join if they want to. Or you can also have private-based channels which are based on a padlock. You can customize Slack as well, so you can actually group your channels into certain sections. We've got marketing teams, so Sarah's in the marketing team. You have announcements-based channels as well, and you can also have sort of your individuals or your pals here, and you can drag and drop the individuals that you often talk to. So we do have one-on-one conversations as well. I talked about public channels, so anyone that is a member of your Slack, what we call workspace. So to let you know, we have a workspace here called Acme Corporation, a make-believe company for the purpose of the demo. And so when we talk about workspace, what we're talking about is everyone that has been invited into the Acme Slack workspace. They will be able to search and find channels. Private channels are locked down to only members that are invited. So you can imagine, particularly in your roles, you have a lot of conversations that you don't want everyone to know about. You only want certain individuals. So you might choose to create a channel that's private and only members that are invited in are part of that group. We also have shared channels. So like I mentioned before, whilst I communicate in emails to some external individuals outside of Slack, a lot of my customers actually already have a Slack workspace, so I'm actually able to share channels across to external companies. And what that means is they can become members in a Slack channel, so I don't actually need to context switch a lot and move into different applications to communicate with them. And what happens in these particular channels is down the bottom, you'll see the company that's external to yours is listed down just as a reminder that those organizations are in the channel. So I believe in this social media channel, we've got a marketing external vendor who's also part of that particular channel. And Zoe is actually from that company. She's got a little company logo next to her display picture. So you can easily collaborate in one place. Just so you guys are aware, we also have Slack integrate with different apps. So Mish touched on this. And the benefit of this is that you don't have to often context switch. So emails can come into Slack, your calendar can come into Slack as well, and you can respond to calendar invites. Just a quick little future insight as well. We will in future also allow the ability to set up calendar meetings from within Slack, and it can actually scan your individuals that you want to invite to a meeting, their diaries, and suggest times that are free. So you can actually help streamline some of that coordination that's required. We have a lot of different applications that connect into Slack. One thing to know, if you go to slack.com/apps, there's about 2,000 different applications. And so there's a lot out there. And really our vision for, tying back to our mission statement is to make people's working lives simpler, more pleasant, more productive, right? So all that time, a couple of minutes here and there, switching between different apps, sharing files, that will save you time in the long run if we connect that into Slack. What I'll actually show you is if you go into your Slack workspace, I'm in a demo environment here. If you have Slack already, you can easily just go and click on the apps section of Slack, and it'll actually bring up the directory, so you don't even need to go to our web page, and you can type in there and search. So I think I heard like Trello, you had maybe a training session on that, and you can just click and add Trello into Slack directly. So it's very straightforward. You can type in calendar as well and search, and we sync with a few different calendar applications, so you can click and install that. I talk about accessing the Slack app. It's very easy. If you just navigate to slack.com and you want to set up a Slack workspace, what you'll have in there is it will have a little button that says join Slack or create a workspace. You can go in and create a free account and start inviting people into Slack. As soon as you do that, you can also access Slack on your mobile as well. So we have that available on Android and your Apple iPhones. And you also have the ability to download an application in the desktop, which essentially means that there is a little widget that appears in your computer, and you click on that to start your day and launch Slack without having to type in a URL address to access your Slack workspace. And I really recommend you install it on your mobile if you're particularly on the go a lot, or you perhaps want to stay connected when you aren't in front of a computer and you're perhaps traveling, probably not in the immediate term right now with COVID. But it's really intuitive. It allows you to stay on top of things. And what I also do is I actually send a lot of notes to myself as well on the mobile if I'm thinking about something so similar to Mish, and you can access it straight from our mobile app. So I'm going to just talk about a couple of things of how Slack can help you in your day-to-day, and we'll talk about some use cases that often people think are really basic, but when I think about Slack and how people actually get the most value out of it, and how do you reduce some of that change resistance and making things overcomplicated, I really just focus on these 4 use cases to help you get started. They're very intuitive, but they actually add a lot of value. So I'll talk about how to organize conversations and channels. You can share files, you can search in Slack, and you can also talk face-to-face on calls as well. So you don't need to download another application. So here was the exact same screenshot that I shared with the social media channel. Just a few things to touch on as well. The message input bar here allows you to import files, so you can attach them with paperclip icon. Emojis are well loved in Slack. You can format your text as well. And when you click on the lightning button, there's also the option to create what we call Slack posts, which is what Lee has posted in here. It's a inbuilt Slack native file that you can actually share, and you capture notes similar to a Word document or a Google Doc that you might be using. So it's just built in directly into Slack. I talked about how to search for apps, so we can rush through this pretty quickly. Here's an example of how Slack can connect to your Outlook calendar. It's a similar look and feel if you use Google Calendar, but what this GIF is showing you is simply once you have it installed, it will notify you of meeting invites that come through. It will send you meeting alerts before the meeting, and you can actually click join and dial into a direct Microsoft Teams call or a Zoom call or a Skype for Business call if you're still on Skype. So it really prevents you from having to even switch to that calendar invite in your actual calendar application. You can customize these alerts that come through as well. So if you don't want to be reminded all the time of all your meetings, you can actually turn that off, and it actually syncs your status in Slack to say that you are in a meeting, so that people who send a message will realize that they shouldn't expect a response right now because you're away having conversations. The other thing is you can bring emails into Slack. So one really key way and a great use case of this is if you have individuals who are emailing you, maybe they're not on Slack yet, but you want to forward this into a channel to bring it to the attention of certain individuals, and those individuals are in Slack. You can actually click on a widget once you have the app installed in your emails and in Slack, and then it can actually just bring up a sidebar where you select who you want to send it to, so it can be individuals or to a channel. You can click include any email attachments and click send, and then that goes into a channel. And the benefit of that is that you just save a whole bunch of email threads that come back. Sometimes people forget to hit reply all, and then people are missing out on the actual conversation. If you put that into a channel, it's surfaced to everyone to have a read at the time in which they choose to actually look through their Slack messages. We also have the ability to integrate Slack into a whole bunch of different calling applications. So here is an example for Zoom. It's quite similar to the calendar integration where it pops up a button where you can actually click and join the call directly from within Slack. But this is also the similar experience from Microsoft Teams. What we also do is if you have the application installed in Slack and you're in a particular channel, or I might just use a direct message with an individual. If you clicked on call in here, I don't have the Zoom application installed in this demo workspace, but if you had Zoom or Cisco WebEx or Microsoft Teams installed, what it will actually do is when you click on this, it will say, do you want to call using the Slack native call feature, or do you want to launch a Zoom call or a Teams call or a WebEx call? And once you select the tool that you want to make that call in, it will actually pipe in those details directly into the Slack message, in a direct message or in a channel, and everyone can actually join that call straight away. You don't even need to type in necessarily the URL link or the password. It will actually bring you across into that call from a simple click. The same goes if you're on your mobile. This is actually really handy. Sometimes I'm on calls where I don't need to be in front of my computer, and I'll take it as a walking call, particularly in today's beautiful weather in Melbourne. And I'll just do it on my mobile. I'll see the invite and I'll click join directly in Slack, and it will take me to that application. Hopefully that sort of gives you a basic foundation understanding of what Slack can do. Before I talk about specific EA use cases of Slack, I just want to go back into the application and just make sure everyone's a little bit more familiar about how to set up their Slack. So this session is recorded, and so you can always go back at a later date and time to run through these tips and tricks I'm going to show you. few things to know is when you set up Slack, you will be able to change your profile. So if you just click on the workspace name, this is just called global, there's a generic name here, click view profile. And what you will see here is details of your title. You can put in your contact details as well, and a sort of field to put in an email address should you want to have that there. We always recommend you to put in a profile picture because it does pop up rather than having a generic avatar with a little cartoon there. It just makes it more personable. You'll see here there's a whole bunch of quick navigation icons. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the key ones that will really make things simple for you is we have a people directory where you click on people, and if you are setting up your own Slack workspace, you may want to actually use this page to click on invite people into this particular workspace. And then what that will do, you click members and you can actually go in and type in email addresses, or you can actually add many at once. So when you click on this, add many at once, hyperlink text, it will actually bring up another widget, which essentially allows you to just copy and paste a whole bunch of email addresses. It can be in a Excel sheet, or it can be from your email directory as well. And then you invite them in. What that will do is it actually bring them into this particular workspace. And once they've accepted the invite, all the individuals will actually appear in this people directory. So this is really helpful if you want to go in and search for certain people. You can search by job title, by location as well. And it depends on what fields they've entered into their profile. So it's very important to have your profile set up and running. You can also access your files that you share directly into Slack in here. So this is another great way to actually search for files that you've shared in. You notice that you can actually search for different types of files, from picture images as well. But also if you have Microsoft OneDrive installed and you're sharing files from OneDrive, it will also surface that in here as well. We'll talk about channels, and one thing to note is you can simply create channels really easily by hovering over the channels section. So if you're completely new to Slack, this will be empty, and so if you just click the plus and you can go in and say browse channel, and you can type in a name. We've provided some suggested naming conventions if you want, or you can override that. And if you want to make a channel private, you simply just toggle over and make it private. But one thing to note is once it's made private, you can't actually convert it back to public later on. So what do I mean by public? Just to make sure that you're all really clear, what we mean by private is if I clicked on the plus icon next to the channel header and I click browse, what it will actually surface is all the public channels that your members of the Slack workspace that you're in have actually already created. So you can go in, if you're completely new, you can actually search for keywords. If I'm part of the marketing team, I can click marketing, hit enter, and it'll actually just surface all the channels that I am either already a member of, or public channels that I'm not a member of, but I can actually join. So that's what we mean by public channels here. Direct messages are really good for one-on-one conversations. I use this as well in my private sort of home workspace, and rather than to save texts and back and forth WhatsApp groups and Facebook Messenger, there's just way too many social applications. We just keep it in Slack directly. So that really covers off what the Slack user interface looks like. So I'm going to go in and spend the next half hour talking about EA specific use cases. So I do have Jess on the line as well, so feel free, Jess, to keep me honest and chime in with any tips and tricks as well.
Will do.
Thanks, Jess. So there's a lot that EAs do at Slack, and this is the same in all your roles. No day is exactly the same, and there's a lot of tasks on here that aren't captured as well. But day in, day out, the common activities that EAs that I work with do, and also Jess and the team actually prepared this slideshow as well, is really everything from coordination to running your execs' diaries, making sure that prepped for meetings, travel, invoices, making sure the team stays connected, the execs team in terms of preparing for team meetings and all hands, a lot of complex calendar scheduling as well, and making sure that any projects that you're in charge of, they run really smoothly to budget, and a lot of cross-functional partnering as well there. So there's a lot of, I guess, complexity around the roles that you have, and a lot of stakeholders that you need to either manage or collaborate with. And Slack is a really great tool for EAs to be able to do a lot of this work. And we recognize a lot of the work that you do in those tasks that we've listed out, and not even listed all of them, they sit in multiple different applications. So like Mish said at the start of the call, what Slack does is it helps actually bring some of the chaos that sits in these applications into one spot in Slack, so that you can access information at your fingertips, communicate and pass that information across the right individuals, and you don't have to switch between all the different applications all the time. Now, it sounds great. Let's actually show you 5 ways in which EAs can use Slack. So these 5 ways I've listed out, and the EAs at Slack have really captured these categories as the key ways to get the most out of Slack. So feedback and approvals, getting help, centralizing information, organizing meetings, and managing events. There's tips and tricks that I'll go through in a lot of these. So let's start with feedback and approvals. So common pain points, often, and this is the same in a lot of roles that I have to work with EAs as well, and how do I make sure that the EAs have the necessary information to work with their execs and the broader team to make sure something's delivered or a key meeting is really successful. And the pain points that we come across is often there's too many communication channels coming through, too many people involved, and perhaps not everyone is across all the key updates that might be happening. There's also the great challenge of making sure people get back to you and that you can actually grab their attention to make sure things come back at a timely pace as well. So the follow-ups can be quite hard if you're working across multiple different cross-functional partners, as well as different tools as well. And the fact that it can often be really disorganized, and the updates can be decentralized. There's no one common view and one platform that people use for this. So we actually, in the example of coordinating meeting agendas and making sure pre-reads are sent out in time and your execs are across key things, our EAs at Slack actually choose to create private channels with the leadership team, and they will send agendas into these channels to make sure that when this channel lights up for your exec, they know straight away the purpose of the channel is leadership meeting agendas. They'll go in and take a look, and what they'll often see from our EAs is the EAs will go in and click the lightning button in the input message input field, and they'll go create a post. Or sometimes the EAs would attach files as well. So the particular agenda might be a PDF file, I'll post it in there. And because Slack surfaces the most recent messages in chronological order, your execs will pick up any unread messages from where they were last reading. And in there, the purpose of that is that you can surface the information, all the leaders in this particular meeting will be able to see it. We use emoji reactions a lot, and what this allows you to see is that an exec might often be really busy, and rather than having to flick an email to say, yep, I'm looking into it, or I've already done this, they can simply just react by putting an emoji next to it. You'll get a notification to say, okay, great, the exec's actually seen it, and you don't have to follow up with them all that much. The flip side of this that's also really good is, there's a meeting that's coming up with your leadership team, and there's a particular set of individuals that need to actually provide pre-read. You can actually set up a channel as well for those particular individuals to feed in and create this agenda and essentially remind them when something needs to be submitted as well. Emojis, I've talked about it. So we use emojis to actually mean something in Slack, and we use it for work. So we put eyes to say we're looking into this, or a thumbs up to say, yep, good to go. And so this is just a really simple way. Literally in a second, you can communicate a whole bunch of messages back and forth.
Actually, it's Julie. I was just going to stop on the emoji and reaction things. I know from an outsider's perspective, when you look at Slack, the emojis are really nice to have. This is an amazing productivity tool. And so that you don't have to send a full message which says, yes, I'm looking at it, I'll get it done by whenever. The eyes and the check mark and everything are a really quick way to get a lot of people to respond, and certainly removes a whole bunch of friction. And I know it seems like a really small thing, but this probably makes one of the biggest differences for me in the workflows, and the way to get work done. So you don't have to do the full formal, hi, Steph, I'm looking into it. I'll hopefully get it done by whenever. That takes time, but one click with eyeballs just really streamlines things in a very simple way.
Yeah.
I think people underestimate this.
Yeah, I'd echo that as well, just really quickly jumping in. I know from my executive, Julie, who I support, we have a channel where it's called Calendar-Julie, and it's like any sort of calendar update, anything that's going on, she'll pop requests in to me. And she trusts me. She doesn't expect me to be like, hey, Julie, like definitely going to get this done. She knows I'll do it, but she wants to make sure that, I've seen it, I'm looking into it. So she'll pop requests in there and I'll be like, boom, 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 looking into it. Real good. And then when it's done, check mark, I've done this. So it's a really good way to kind of, as Julie mentioned as well, like streamline kind of those requests. She knows I'm looking into it. She knows that this is a channel where all of the requests around the calendar are kept.
Yeah. I think the other thing is a lot of the execs, once they understand like Slack, and we'll talk about how to get execs on board, they're often on their mobiles and rarely, in front of like necessarily at their desk. And I was going to say, now that they're working from home, they're probably more likely to be in front of their computers. But if they're on the go or even traveling, it's really good because the user interface on the mobile, it seems like short little messages that you get, like kind of like a text message. And I can see and preview all the files as well from directly within Slack. So it is really, really handy. And it just means you get quicker responses. I actually find when I ping senior leaders, they respond very quickly, particularly for those that are my customers that I support and the execs that I work for at my customers. I get very quick responses, particularly in direct messages because it's on their mobile. Expedited help. So what I mean by this, often that you have to work with a lot of different teams to actually get particular actions quickly through, or perhaps an exec has a leadership meeting or a team-based meeting, which is more like an all hands. You might have to collaborate with events, AV, making sure the room's set up, etc., in the right way. And some of these requests can also be private and sensitive, so you can't necessarily share it with everyone. And if you put that into an email, sometimes that can be forwarded on. You accidentally include the wrong people. And so with a channel that's private, only those that are invited into that channel will be able to see it, and you don't have that risk of information being shared to the wrong people. The other thing is as well, follow-up of requests, knowing where things are at. So what the EAs do that use Slack is they create private channels with the cross-functional teams that they might be working with. So you see here, there's an IT support channel, there's a workplace, and our workplace team is essentially, they manage the office, make sure all the meeting rooms aren't double booked, and any sort of guests that need to be coming into the office, they're aware of that. Reception as well, and these are locked down to be private, and again, emojis, like Julie and Jess said, they're really fantastic. Who's actually put their eyes on it. If you need to chase them, you can simply just put a reply in and say, hey, XYZ person, where's this at? I noticed you put in the emoji response 2 days ago. You can also use user groups. So you notice here, when you actually set up Slack, if you want to invite people in, you can choose to set up a user group, which is like an email distribution list. So here, Rowan has actually created a user group for reception. And so what happens there is everyone that's part of that reception group will get a notification that appears in Slack, and they know that they should be checking that straight away because someone is directly calling out to them. So this means that you probably get a response a lot quicker, and you'll be able to identify who needs to be involved as well. So it's completely transparent. It means that you don't have to try and triage and chase people up, especially if you're working remotely where you can't actually go up to that individual there. So these help channels are fantastic. And the other thing I would note about these help channels as well is that if the reception is working on something, the reception team are most likely going to respond in this channel directly and work with other receptionists. So you can actually just see where all the workflows are at. So it's completely transparent. You get kept up to date.
Steph, I was just going to note too, for those guys that haven't used Slack, when you're using the @ symbol, like tagging someone in, they know it's a specific task. So if you're walking around and you're waiting for someone to action something, if they tag you in it and say it's done, or that you can action it very, very quickly. And I think that's the key thing here, is that you don't need to be in Slack all the time. You only need to go in when there's an actionable item, or you can catch up later in the day when you need something from it. So guys, when you see the @ symbol, that means it's they're requesting someone to action or to look at that item quite quickly.
Yeah.
Sorry, Steph.
No. Don't apologise at all.
Yeah, although I will caution people from overusing the certainly @ channel. We tend to not use @ channel much at all in Slack, which basically notifies everyone in the channel. It's like CCing everyone in the company every time you respond to an email, which we don't want to do. Yeah. But yeah, definitely use it wisely.
So for those that haven't used Slack before, what we mean by the @ there's two ways to do it. You simply just, like in an email, you go @ and then you actually see a drop down field appear, and it recognizes like, okay, @ means calling out to someone, right? And so you can type in a person's name and go Samuel, right? Or the other way that you could do it is hi, and then you can go over to this @ button, and it will actually just direct you to the same particular mentioned sort of pop-up window. So that's what we mean by @ there.
I think just going back on that one point a little really quickly, another helpful way to kind of think of why to use @ channel or @ a certain team member. Often when I write up action notes from a team meeting, it's like, this person is going to do this. And everyone's like, yep, sure, agree. We're definitely going to get that done. Does that happen? Don't know. So then at the end of the day, I write down like, hey, Julie said she was going to do this action item, @ mention her, @ mention I'm responsible for this. So it's kind of like a living, breathing, to-do list. And it's really easy to become more accountable when you have, your name, you're mentioned in a, public channel that you're going to follow up on that. So a little bit more accountability.
Yeah. Centralizing information. So this one here really speaks to itself, right? Often there's a lot of different messages that might come through. People might email you and they might instant message you, and then you'll be on the phone in a meeting. And so often that what people are trying to do is essentially find out where things are at, or be able to track things down to see who's looking into certain things. And what we find with Slack is that we see with channels that it allows you to focus, and it also, there's some tips and tricks I'll talk about as well, to be able to prioritize things. So you might choose, for example, if a channel lights up for marketing brainstorm, you're like, I'm not in the marketing team, I don't need to read that. But if there's a particular team, if you're in PR and you're part of that team, when it lights up, you know that, okay, I'm going to go and read that message because that relates directly to me and my team. But everything else in the other channels where I might just be more of a viewer, I don't really need to be across it. So it's very different to email where things come in, and rather than it's pushed out to you, you have to read through all of it to try and work out, is this relevant to me or not? And the subject line often was originally one topic, and then the message has actually, the thread has moved on to another topic completely. So what we mean by centralizing information as well is to keep everything in one place, right? So a really good example of this, and I actually use this personally, is I have my expenses channel and I'll take photos of my expenses and then post it into that channel so I have a historical record of it. In this particular one, Robbie's one of our execs. He obviously travels a lot, and so he'll just post images into the dedicated channel, and the EA will be able to pick it up and then put emojis like tick, done, 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 and go off from there. You can also put a reminder, say, Robbie, like you haven't actually submitted any of your invoices to me or your expenses. I need this by X date. And so these emoji reactions have a purpose, and it allows you to be able to keep things up to date as well. The other thing is centralizing information again. So similar to the meeting agenda one for a broader leadership team, you can have one that is just dedicated to your particular exec that you're supporting. And like Jess said, you can just simply put in quick messages and your exec can just follow an emoji key and react to that to say, yep, I'm looking into it, or I'll look at it at a later date. So, a couple of things that on the topic of reminders as well. Just for the example's sake, I'm in the PR team channel, and Jennifer's actually asked people to look into a few things and to share some thoughts before the end of the day as a reflection ahead of the team meeting. Now, if I saw this message and I actually don't have time, and I might say emoji eyes looking into it, but I don't want to forget about it, you can actually click more actions and you can say, remind me about this. And you can actually say a certain future date and time, or you can customize and actually put in here. My internet's a little bit slow. Oh, of course, that happens when I click away. And you can select a future date and time. I might say Friday, or, what's going on? And then once you select the date and time, you can put in a note, click create, click create. And what it will do is actually, Slackbot is a bot that's built into Slack, only you see it, and it will actually send you a reminder at a future date and time that you've selected. And so that will come through, and it's a really handy way to keep across things. I use Slack as my to-do list.
Just to jump in really quickly with the agendas, it doesn't really have to be the way we kind of use our agenda channels. It's not super formal. So if I'm just like, things pop into my head, I'm like, oh crap, I haven't spoken to my exec about, this event, we have all hands coming up, all of those things like throughout the day. I just like pop them in the channels as I think of them. And my boss does the same, as things come up. It's an easier way to organize the information and things that we need to talk about.
Yeah. One thing I'll also say is your channels, you can actually star them. And what it will do is it'll bring it up to a starred section. So it's like your favorites bar. So if you have your execs that are using Slack, what you can choose to do is just sit down with them and say, oh, these are the channels that you're going to frequently use, and it'd be helpful if you star this. Or you can actually create a section. If you go in here, create a new section, you can type in, I don't know, EA exec channels. I might put here like particular emoji. That's probably not a good one. Speech bubble. And go create. And once that's actually created, the section, you can actually pull it to the top, and then you can simply drag and drop. This is, just for example's sake, drag and drop those channels to that particular section. And so it just is at the top view in Slack. Offsite, again, similar sort of themes that you're probably seeing to come through, centralizing information. You have a dedicated channel for organizing an offsite. You put in details of the offsite as well, and perhaps the agenda for the next couple of days. If people have questions, they pop it into this particular channel as well, and you'll be able to respond. So again, it's a dedicated place for you to be able to communicate on this particular topic. Organising meetings, Boy, I don't envy EAs. I think you guys have one of the most challenging jobs in terms of all the things that you need to be across. And what Slack can do is actually help with a lot of the back and forth communication to even get that meeting into the diary. And you can actually set a streamlined way to request for those meetings and make sure that you can follow up and get that into the diary pretty quickly. So we love emojis. And so what you can do is you can have a dedicated channel that might be set up. So for example, I work in the sales and customer success team. If you wanted, you might set up a channel that says sales, customer success, exec meeting requests. And then you have a particular template that you might post in the channel. And you can simply use the template here, copy and paste it, and essentially have list out the meeting, the duration, who you want to attend, and then provide some options there. And people can vote, and they vote just using emojis to say, hey, what works best for the individuals. And so it might be in a channel with other EAs, right, to try and coordinate the times and dates there. So again, what they've done here is attendees, the exec names, and then CC the EAs that support those execs. And so those EAs will get a notification and then they'll be able to respond. So
just to jump in, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to jump in really quickly. We often also put in another part of the template of the agenda, or the reason, or a little bit more context for the meeting. And then I find, if I'm looking at my exec's calendar and I'm like, that needs to be moved, I can go back into this channel and be like, I have no idea what this meeting is about. How important is it? I can look back in and be like, great, she can miss it. Someone can represent her, and she can probably catch up later in a channel associated with this meeting. So it's streamlined. I know when in my prior roles, I would be back and forth in email change, sometimes 50 threads to get one meeting locked in, which is just, painful. But two, it just allows me to become better organized myself. So I know I can kind of make decisions on her behalf a little bit quicker.
Yeah. So that's sort of the meeting requests, you can use this as a certain template, and then individuals can actually respond in a thread to provide certain context as well. So just a topic about threads, so I don't all lose you. So you can post messages in Slack in the message input bar. Every time you post in a new message, it appears right down the bottom in chronological order. But imagine here, Bella's posted an agenda for today's meeting and says, please add anything that's missing here. And you might actually see this, 3 hours later, and there's other new messages that have come in. If you want to make sure that your message actually has associated context, you can actually choose to reply in a thread. So what happens is you hover over the message, and it might be hard to see on my screen, but it goes light grey, and these buttons appear on the right, and you click on the speech bubble and it says reply to thread. And you see here, Bernie's actually responded with some extra items, and you can actually respond with, here's an extra item, hiring update. And you click send, and it actually shares that response in a thread, and Bella will get notified about it. You don't necessarily need everyone else to know the updates, but if it was something really, really important, you can say, important update and pre-work. Please all share hiring budgets or something for the year. And you say also send to the actual channel, PR team, you click send, and what will happen is that message will also be posted in as a new message with a hyperlink to the original threaded conversation. So you've got some context all here in the right.
Yeah, I'll just jump in here too, Steph. I think this is one of the things that helps you organize a lot of information in a really, as Steph said, contextual way. And it's something that's not really intuitive as you learn to use channels. So often people will respond in channel, but if you've ever had a WhatsApp thread or a text thread where people are bringing in 4 different conversations at once and you're trying to respond all in one thread, one channel, very, very confusing. So the threads actually keep all your information where you can respond to a specific post as opposed to responding across the whole channel. It's definitely very useful. And it's also one thing that I find with new users of Slack that they have a hard time starting to use threads as a way of responding to a message.
Yeah.
Yep, go on.
The recruiting coordination. So funny enough, I was just talking about recruiting as an example in that thread. Often if you are involved in having to set up sort of interviews that might be happening and execs need to be involved for some senior hires, there's a lot of coordination there. You've got to talk with talent acquisition and HR, so you can have a dedicated recruitment exec scheduling channel. Make it private, because obviously you might be sharing in people's resumes, contact details, etc., and so you can communicate directly in that channel there. And then lastly, managing events. Again, centralizing information, reducing a lot of back and forth one-on-one messages that might be happening. You want to make sure that information is transparent and just has one place. So we have something in our sales conference offsite, which is called Global Sales Offsite, GSO. And so that's a dedicated channel. Bob Fraddy is actually our senior VP. So he actually has this channel here that he'll post announcements. He'll actually share, so Joanna actually is his EA, and she will share any key information, to do activities as well, and due dates, to actually make sure people respond in time. And so there's a lot of information that gets shared closer to the date. People actually get super excited and they put in their emoji reactions. And so this is just a really great way to create the buzz for a team that might be dispersed, and to be able to be across a whole bunch of information, rather than multiple emails that might be coming back and forth. It's also really good, to coordinate with your events team as well. If you need to get t-shirts printed, you can have your suppliers in a channel. Again, because there's accountability when you've mentioned people and others know that, hey, certain individuals need to get onto action, you do get faster responses, and it's just simply a couple of messages and short messages back and forth to be able to close things out. So you can invite guests into those channels. Social, love a good social channel. I think working from home, there's, parents that have their homeschooling channels. We have a baking channel that is extremely active in there. People share tips and tricks of, their home workouts as well. So social channels are a massive plus for Slack, and it helps just connect that culture and staff engagement. So we're very close to the end of this session. There's a few more slides that have text. What I'll do is I'll PDF it and share it with Mish. Really, it's to summarize, the benefits of using Slack to centralize information, get quicker responses, be able to integrate your applications. But I think importantly, how do you get your execs involved? I think if you do set up Slack and if you already have it, set up just key channels that you think your execs would value, in terms of just going to the one application to get up-to-date information about agendas, preparing for meetings, being able to coordinate directly with you. And so that's the best way to get them set up on Slack. The other thing as well is, if they choose to use Slack for their broader team, it's a really great way to stay connected with your team, and be able to have like an Ask Me Anything channel where colleagues can actually share any questions that they might have to ask your exec, and they can respond, particularly if you're working remotely, and you want to keep some of that culture and water cooler conversation going. So we have a lot of execs that use Slack for that, and they love it because they can simply pop in when they choose to actually go and respond to some of those questions. Again, we have birthday announcements as well. And, Bob, our senior VP, he has his own emoji. I don't think we've included it in here, but you can customize your emojis as well in there. So I'm going to maybe wrap it there because we are a minute over. Mish, do you have any closing thoughts, or are there any last questions to ask?
I think this is another thing, I'm constantly talking about with the EAs about, reducing the zero inbox. So I think it's a key thing to be using Slack. I think also it's a quick and efficient way to get a response or when something is going on quite quickly in the business. Because the thing is, we spend too much time. At the moment, we're spending between 38 and 42% of our day on emails. It's way too high. We should be under 20%. So for me, this is a great way to remove the email communication, both internally and externally. And I think also being a productivity tool, it's about being productive. How can we be more efficient and how can we be more productive? And as an EA, we need to get things done quickly, and this is a really easy way to do it and to get a response when you need the response. So I don't know, Jess, you use it all the time, and I love it. I think also for the guys that we talked about OneNote a couple of weeks ago, this is also a great way to integrate your executive to start using a different way. If OneNote hasn't worked for them, I would try Slack. So, you can go in, you can put their daily calendar in there, you can do their sign-off documents in there, create those different channels for them to be using. So because the thing is that if you've got an exec that is constantly still using paper or constantly still wants to open a workbook, this is another way to kind of get them off that page and starting somewhere new. So think about it. If OneNote hasn't worked for you, I think try Slack. It integrates all into your Microsoft platforms or your drives or your files. It's again using a platform that's working with your current platforms that create efficiency. So I don't know, Jess, have you got any leaving notes that maybe for these guys?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, it's always going to be a hard transition. I think it's supporting busy executives. It's kind of hard, when you're set in your ways, but I've really found like the core parts of my job, like expenses Julie, calendar Julie, agendas Julie, things like that are all like a perfect example is I supported an executive previously that didn't have Slack. And I remember when she was going on a flight, I'd sent her printed out her boarding pass. It was all done, but I knew I had to get home. And she texted me and she's like, I can't find anything. I don't have this. And I was like, crap, I'm in transit, this is never going to work. And with Slack, it's like, great, Julie/travel, everything that she ever needs to know, she can just pop in there. It saves just so much back and forth. I think about an email thread and it's like 30 threads, and I only really need Julie to pop in really quickly and be like, yep, this date works for me, or this date doesn't work. It just saves all of that back and forth. She can look at little things throughout the day versus me having to wait until the end of the day to get all the answers I need to continue doing my job. So it just makes the feedback loop so much quicker. And it means I can, spend the time that I need to spend dedicating towards different things and different projects I'm working on.
Amazing. I reckon there's a few of you, your heads are overloading with information at the moment. I can see it tell going. Hey, has anyone got any questions? Because I'm very conscious of everyone's time. Has everyone got any, if you think of something later, remember that, the power of social media. You guys, if you want to set up a Slack channel and contact these guys, or you've got LinkedIn to DM as well. But I think it's another great tool, especially if you're trying to reduce the email in the inbox, because we keep talking about this. You should be aiming for a zero inbox policy. And this is a way to remove the internal communications out of emails into another platform that is quick and easy. There's no formalities. And it's also a great way for your exec when they're traveling a lot. I love them. Look, the mobile application of Slack's fantastic. You can be anywhere. It's working from wherever you want to be. So has anyone got any questions before we go? Hey, Steph, thank you.
No worries. I've had a few private DMs. So if any of you want to contact me on LinkedIn, just search for Steph Lau, and then I'm more than welcome to connect with you guys and send some private messages to help you out. So no, nothing else. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Mish.
No problems. And thanks, Jess, from the US. Kerry, have you got a question?
No worries.
Or were you just...
Sorry. What I wanted to ask, so like historically, obviously with email, we would manage our execs' emails. So how do you manage the content that goes into their version of Slack, like to make sure that they are actioning stuff that goes to them that you may not be in part of a channel? Like say if somebody messages them directly in Slack, how do you manage that, know that they've actually done it?
Yeah, that's tough. I think, you know, I can't operate at, so I control my boss's inbox as well. I can't necessarily, sorry, siren going across my street. Working from home. I can't act as her like double to jump into her Slack. So I think it's just kind of transforming the behavior a little bit. Like I'm in every private channel basically that she needs eyes on. People also mention me, be like, hey, Julie, this needs to be done. CC Jess. So that it's kind of like a behavioral shift in that way. And I think once you make those of like, people know they need to mention me, and then I can, for example, just say there's like 5 posts at the end of the day I know Julie needs to read. I can copy the links of those, and then I just DM her. I'm like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You need to do these by end of day because these people are waiting, or something like that. So it is a little bit hard because you're not necessarily acting as her, but it makes things a little bit more streamlined with the channels having certain things like, as I mentioned as well, calendar is like such a big one, like calendar and expenses, kind of like breaking those up. But then the project channels, I'm mainly in all of those that she needs to be in.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
No worries.
Amazing. Any other questions?
Yes, sorry, it's Elizabeth. I have a question for Jessica. Can you give us a few examples of the private channel you've created with your manager?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm in a lot of private channels that might be like hiring team members where we can't share like the offer that's going to be made. So for example, like Julie will need to sign off that we're going to pay this person in this, you know, salary, etc., etc. She'll just need to do like the eyes check, we're good to go. So things like that we don't share publicly. I do also, like for certain meetings, for example, a marketing team leads meeting, that's like a private channel because we sometimes discuss confidential things. We try and default to being public just because, like, I mean, we all know the more context you know, the easier life will be. And I think, you know, especially for EAs, we're often looped in last minute with very little context, and it's like, what's going on? How can I possibly help? Having the public channels means if I'm added to a channel, I can just read up and scroll back and read all the information that I need to and kind of gather that context. So that makes my life a lot easier, or like pop into certain channels and find things. But default to public unless it's kind of sensitive information, things with finance or like recruiting and things like that, or yeah, confidential matters, but we try and default to public.
Anyone else? I think we're all good, aren't we? Amazing. Well, it's a short week, guys, so go out, use your EA superpowers and be amazing, and remember to use technology to create efficiencies and become a better version of yourself. So big thanks to Steph, big thanks to Jess from the US because I know it's the end, and Elizabeth, great to see you from Paris again. I'll share the recording. Jess will send me through the presentation as a PDF, so I'll attach it in the email later today. But remember to stay connected, and as Steph said, or Jess is there as well, just reach out via LinkedIn, and yeah, and keep being amazing in what you do, guys. So have a great Tuesday, and I hope to see you guys all soon.
Thanks so much.